Okay, in this video, I'm going to talk about L1 transfer in second language acquisition. Let's begin. So let me explain the word transfer. So if you're on a train, or if we are on a train, we sometimes hear an announcement like the next station is Yokohama. Passengers changing to the JR line, please transfer at this station. So here we have the word transfer, and so we are coming from this direction on this line, and at this station we change to this line and go to this direction, go in this direction maybe. So here transfer means to move from one route to another route, or more generally transfer means to move from one place to another. And when we talk about language transfer, it's actually similar to this. So we have our first language and we have our second language, and properties of our first language appear in our second language. So these things influence these. So when we say L1 transfer, we mean influences of our first language or mother tongue on the use and learning of our second language. Okay? So I'll give you some examples. So how do you pronounce these words? Actually, these words are a little difficult for Japanese to pronounce. So Japanese people tend to say model, tonnel, Christmas, and tema. But I think in English this should be model, this should be tunnel, this should be Christmas, and this should be theme. But I've actually had so many my own students say tema. When they speak English, tema is Japanese. This should be theme. And what about these? This should be sit down, but Japanese tend to say shit down. I think we shouldn't say this to our students. So our students should not shit down in the classroom. Okay. And what about this? This should be city, not shitty. And this should be university, not university. If we say university, our university, city, I'm confused. Our university sounds like a really bad place. So, and this comes from the fact that Japanese only has shi, so we don't have si in Japanese. So Japanese people tend to say things like this when they speak English. So these are examples of transfer from Japanese to second language English. But what about this? Actually, Japanese people don't have problems with pronunciations of these. I hope this is happy, this is help, this is hippodrome. But I had a friend from France when I was living in the UK, and this French friend of mine usually didn't pronounce H here. And it seems that the letter H is not pronounced in French. So he tended to say appy, elp, in hippodrome. So this is the name of a nightclub near our university. So he always said hippodrome. And I found a good piece of evidence on the internet. So please listen to this. This is one of the former French presidents.
We will be happy to help you make money in France.
Did you hear it?
We will be happy to help you make money in France. We will be happy to help you make money in France.
I think he said happy instead of happy and help instead of help. So it seems that French people really don't pronounce H. I may be wrong, I don't know. That's my guess. And these are examples of foreign accents. So when Japanese people speak English, and they have Japanese accents on their English, and foreign accents are a kind of interference. So our first language interferes with our second language, and we also call it negative transfer. And actually, early second language acquisition research mainly focused on interference. But actually, interference is not the only kind of transfer. So there is also positive transfer. So for example, we have what we call cognates. Cognates are words of the same origin that are used in different but related languages. So for example, German and English are related languages. They have the same ancestor. And if you look at these, you can see similarities. I think the similarities are really clear here. So if you are a German speaker, I think you can guess the meaning of this word, and perhaps you can also guess the meaning of this word. So these German words and the English words are really similar. And we also have loanwords. Loanwords are words that are borrowed from an unrelated foreign language. So for example, the Japanese language borrowed these words. So we have banana for banana and tomato for tomato or tomato. So, but English and Japanese are not related at all. So they didn't come from the same ancestor. But Japanese borrowed some words from English. And because we know, because we have cognates or loanwords in our first language, the knowledge of those can help us imagine the meanings of some words, not all of course, some words in our second language. So this can be positive transfer. So the knowledge of our first language helps us predict the meanings of some words in our second language. Okay. And as I said, interference is not the only aspect, is not the only kind of transfer. Interference captures only one aspect of first language influence, which is the negative aspect. So currently, this word, cross-linguistic influence or SLA, and also transfer are more often used because they are neutral. And these can be both negative and positive. So these days, when we talk about first language influence, we use cross-linguistic influence or transfer instead of interference. So I will use transfer in this video. And here we have some factors affecting first language transfer or cross-linguistic influence. So I cannot explain all of these, but we have linguistic factors such as language distance, linguistic markedness, and psychological factors such as learner's perception of prototypicality, or psychotypology and individual factors such as age and aptitude, and contextual factors. These are contexts of second language use and contexts of second language learning. So if you're interested in this, please try to find some information about this. You can find a lot of information about this in books and maybe even on the internet. So let me explain only some of these. So first, language distance. What is language distance? So some languages are closely related. For example, English and German are closely related, and others are quite difficult. Quite distant. English and Japanese are not related at all, so they are very, very distant. And actually, I think all European languages came from the same ancestor. So we can trace them back to this hypothetical language called Indo-European proto-language, I think. And for example, so we can draw a kind of a tree, language tree. So we kind of know where these current languages came from and where they belong. So for example, English belongs to the Germanic family, and for example, Portuguese belongs to the Italic family, or language family maybe. So it's clear that English, German, Dutch, and Swedish, they are closely related. They belong to the same language family, and of course, Japanese is not part of this tree. So Japanese is not related at all to these languages. And here we have some very interesting data. American diplomats. Diplomats are people who represent your country in foreign countries. So diplomats go to foreign countries and represent your country there. And American diplomats learn foreign languages at the organization called the Foreign Service Institute. I'm not quite sure if we still have this, but let's assume that this still exists. And this organization divides languages into 4 groups depending on how long it takes it takes American diplomats to learn them. And the next table presents the hours required for American diplomats with superior language aptitude to attain level 3 or 3+ speaking proficiency. So here, please understand that American diplomats are elite diplomats, of course, and this table only presents the data from diplomats with superior language aptitude. Of course, not everyone has superior language aptitude. Some people have normal language aptitude. Other people have low language aptitude. But here I present the data from people with superior or high language aptitude. So we have 4 groups of languages, and here we have hours required for American diplomats with superior language aptitude to attain level 3 or 3+ speaking proficiency. And please look at the differences in these hours. So if you are American diplomat and if you want to be able to speak Dutch fluently, and if you have superior language aptitude, you need to learn Dutch for about 720 hours. Okay, but please take a look at this. If you want to do the same thing for Japanese, for example, so you are an American diplomat and you want to master Japanese, you need so many hours. Okay, and it's really clear that there is an overall tendency that languages close to English, these, are learned quickly by American diplomats, while it takes a long time to master languages that are distant from English, such as Arabic, Chinese, Japanese, and Korean. These are not related to English. I don't know about Arabic. Is there any relationship between Arabic and English? I don't know. I'm not quite sure. So, if your first language is not related to your second language, usually it takes more time for you to master it. So, language distance clearly plays a role in your second language acquisition. Okay, now let's turn to age. Sorry. So according to this paper, the more established the L1 is at the time of L2 acquisition, the greater the influence it, here it means the L1, the greater the influence it will have on the L2. So so this means that when you are very young, your L1 is not quite established, it's not firmly established. So in that case, it will have a smaller influence on your L2. But if you have already grown up, if you are let's say an adult, your L1 has been firmly established. In that case, your L1 will have a great influence on your L2. So if you're young, your L1 isn't firmly established yet, and the influence from your L1 to your L2 is small. But if you have grown up, and if your L1 if your L1 acquisition is almost complete, then your L1 will have a bigger influence on your L2. Okay, and I have a good example. This researcher called Oyama studied the strength of foreign accents on L2 English in 60 Italian men who immigrated to the US at various ages, and their ages of immigration varied from 6 to 20 years. So some of them immigrated to the US when they are 6 years old, and others went to the US when they are, I don't know, 10 years old, 15 years old, or even 20 years old. And their length of residence also varied from 5 to 18 years. And these participants from Italy did two tasks. They were asked to read aloud a paragraph in English, and also they were asked to tell a story in English. And their strengths of accents, so they had Italian accents on their second language English, and their strength of accents was assessed by native English speakers on a 5-point scale. So one means no foreign accents, and 5 means strong accents. Okay, and 2, 3, and 4 mean somewhere in between. And this is the data. If this bar is very high, it means that you have strong accents. And in this study, native speakers of English were also tested, and because they didn't have any accents, their score is 1. Okay, 1 means no accent. And obviously this group, this group had a very strong accent, and these are the people who came to the US when they were 16 to 20 years old. So these are the people who came to the US late in their life. And the Italian people, the Italian men who arrived in the US when they are very, very young, like when they were 6, they had weak accents. Okay, so obviously here we can say that the strength of accents, foreign accents, is related to the age of arrival or age of immigration. Okay, and this data is only about paragraph reading, so I'm not presenting the data about storytelling, but actually the data look very, very similar. And interestingly, the length of residence doesn't play any role here. So here we have the data from people who lived in the US for many, many years. And so if you compare this with this, we don't see any difference actually. So here it's clear that age and error transfer are related. And let's now turn to this issue of universality and transfer. And so in English, we have, well, actually in many other languages too, but English has many grammatical morphemes and function words such as plural s, first person singular s, and articles. And ESL learners have to acquire these grammatical morphemes and function words. And it's been found that there is an order of acquisition that is common to many ESL learners. So these morphemes and function words are learned one after another, and that order is identical across different learners. So it seems that the development of L2 knowledge is universal to some extent. So there is a kind of universal pattern in the acquisition of English as a second language. And this famous researcher called Krashen proposed what is called the natural order for acquisition of L2 English. So he claimed that these morphemes and function words are acquired first, and then these will acquired next, and after that this is acquired, and lastly these are acquired. So this is the acquisition order or natural order of acquisition in L2 English. But so there is universality to some extent, but there's also transfer effect. There is also cross-linguistic influence. And these two researchers conducted a meta-analysis of 7 articles involving 14 sets of data on Japanese speakers' acquisition of L2 English morphemes. Okay. And based on the orders reported for these 14 sets of data, I calculated the average of orders for each of the morphemes as shown by the red line on the next page. So please, let's take a look at the figure. And the blue line indicates the order in the natural order as proposed by Krashen. So progressive ing, plural s, and copula, these are acquired first, and auxiliary and article are acquired next, and irregular past is acquired after that, and regular past and third person singular s and possessive s are acquired last. Okay, so this line, a blue line, is the same thing as this. Okay, and this red line indicates the average order of these 14 sets of data on Japanese speakers' acquisition of L2 English morphemes. So if you look at this, you can see that these two lines are similar, but here, and here we see a clear difference. So plural s is actually one of the morphemes that are acquired very early according to the natural order, but for Japanese it's not so easy. It's actually a little difficult. So Japanese people acquire plural s later than predicted by the natural order. And also the acquisition of articles in English is a little late for Japanese. But if you take a look at this, you can see that possessive s is easy for Japanese, and these are transfer effects. So plural s and articles are acquired late by Japanese ESL learners, and in Japanese plural marking is not required. So when we say one book and many books, the Japanese word for book doesn't change. So this means one book and this means many books, but we have the same word without any other morpheme or any other marking. So Japanese doesn't mark plural or plurality. I don't know. And in Japanese, there are no articles such as the and a. But Japanese people acquire possessive s early or earlier than predicted by the natural order, and this is actually similar to Japanese no. So this is pronounced like no, and this word or this particle has a similar function to possessive s. So maybe this is the reason why Japanese people don't have much problem acquiring possessive s in English. So so it seems that there is some evidence for transfer or cross-linguistic inference in the acquisition order of morphemes. Okay, so there is universality, or there is a universal pattern in second language acquisition, but also there is some transfer. There are some effects of transfer. Okay, we have both of these. And before I finish, let me talk about persistent transfer effects in ESL. So here, persistent means that it's difficult to eliminate transfer. So when I say persistent transfer effects, I mean negative transfer effects that are difficult to eliminate or difficult to get rid of. So for example, in Japanese, we don't always have to say the subject and the object. So this sentence means something like, did you buy that book? And this one means, yeah, I bought it. But this sentence doesn't have a subject. And this doesn't have an object either. So this has only the verb, okay, bought in this case. And Japanese people tend to say things like, yeah, I bought, without saying it. Okay, I bought. They say the subject, but they don't say the object. More accurately, they don't say the object pronoun. They say the subject pronoun, but they don't say the object pronoun. So Japanese ESL learners tend to drop objects, but they don't drop subjects. So they know that we shouldn't drop subject in English, but they don't really know that we shouldn't drop objects either. And this is really persistent. So we often see this in Japanese people's English. So actually, I think they don't know this. And so in this kind of case, maybe we should provide explicit instruction on this point. So we should teach explicitly that in English we shouldn't do this. And if we do so, maybe it will lead to noticing. So it will help Japanese ESL learners notice that we cannot do this in English. And I think if we don't do it, if we don't provide explicit instruction, Japanese ESL learners just keep doing this. And here we have another example of persistent transfer. And this is about adverb placement in French. And if you compare the position of an adverb in French and English, it's very interesting. So let's begin with the subject, adverb, verb, object order. So example would be, John often plays football. This order is grammatical in English, but ungrammatical in French. And the subject, verb, adverb, object order, an example would be, John plays often football. This is ungrammatical in English, but grammatical in French. Okay? Interesting, isn't it? And actually, French ESL learners transfer this to their L2 English. So French ESL learners tend to say this in their L2 English. John plays often football. And this person, this researcher called White, she taught this rule to 11 and 12-year-old French-speaking ESL learners, and studied the effects of this teaching, effects of this instruction. And the data are very, very interesting. And this is the results of grammaticality judgments on ungrammatical SVAO sentences. SVAO sentences. So in English, this is ungrammatical. And this bar represents data that are taken before teaching, before instruction. And although this order, SVAO, is ungrammatical in English, these French-speaking children gave a high score, so they actually tended to judge these ungrammatical sentences as grammatical. So this is before teaching, before instruction. But immediately after instruction, immediately after teaching, their grammaticality judgments changed dramatically. So these French-speaking children started to judge these ungrammatical sentences as ungrammatical. Okay. And 5 weeks later, 5 weeks after instruction or teaching, and their judgment got even better. But 1 year after teaching or instruction, their judgments returned to the previous level. I mean, the level of before teaching. It's sad. And this is about the same as children who are not taught. So actually, we can teach about this to French-speaking ESL learners, and they will show an immediate change in their grammaticality judgments, but the effects of teaching, the effects of instruction, don't seem to last very long. So actually, this tendency is very difficult to eliminate completely. And to conclude, we have some educational implications of from research on L1 transfer or cross-linguistic inference. Teachers should recognize both universal tendencies and transfer or CLI. We have both of these in our second language or second language acquisition. And teachers should take advantage of positive transfer, such as so we should rely on Cognates and loanwords, for example, and we should draw learners' attention to areas of possible negative transfer that are difficult to notice. For example, object drop in Japanese. But of course we can teach that kind of thing, but we should not be too strict with persistent transfer errors that are extremely difficult to eliminate, such as errors related to adverb placement in French speakers ESL. Okay, let's finish. These are the references. Thanks for listening.